everyone. This is the Cape Cod Run Show, a new show here at the Cape Cod Community Media Center where we talk about all things running. And today I'm very pleased to welcome into the studio Dr. Elissa Thompson. She's a cardiologist with Cape Cod Healthcare's Heart and Vascular Institute. Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So really excited to talk about running. I think that heart health and exercise go very well together. So maybe we'll start there. Like, how important is a regular exercise schedule to keeping your heart healthy?
Regular exercise is important for your entire body, and it's important to keep exercise as a daily recommendation foremost in your mind. There's nothing that exercise doesn't do that's not beneficial to the body. It depends on what kind of exercise, and we can talk about that in a little bit, but in general, the most important thing for any person of any age to do on a daily basis is to exercise. We know that people, for instance, who have seated jobs are at higher risk for heart attack, stroke, and death just because they sit too much. We know that people who exercise more and who can get in about 10,000 steps, whether it's through running or walking, but if they can do about 10,000 steps per day, that's going to improve their health dramatically. So it's a goal that we often use just with our patients at the Heart and Vascular Institute, but also with people who already exercise and who are regular exercisers to have a goal that can help them keep their weight down, keep their blood pressure down, keep their blood sugar down, and help control their cholesterol. So there's a lot of benefits to exercise that we know of for every person.
Fantastic. And so obviously we're here to talk specifically about running. So can we talk a little bit about what happens to the heart when someone runs?
Sure. What happens to the heart when people run or perform moderate to high intensity exercise is the heart beats faster and your blood pressure goes up. One of the things that patients often ask me about is it okay for my blood pressure to go up because I'm on medication to keep my blood pressure down? And during exercise, it's actually very important for the blood pressure to go up and the heart to beat faster. It conditions the heart and it conditions your body. When you exercise, any exercise, specifically running, but any moderate to high intensity exercise, also increases the amount of nitric oxide that your body produces. Nitric oxide is what when we give people who have heart disease, for example, when we give them nitroglycerin, that is converted to nitric oxide in their body. Nitric oxide keeps our blood pressure low, it keeps our heart supple, and it keeps our arteries supple. So the more you exercise, the more intensely that you exercise, and the more frequently that you exercise, the more you're going to condition your heart and vascular system, and the lower your blood pressure will be. So when you're running, you're going to get that increase in nitric oxide to help improve blood flow to your exercising muscles, your legs, your arms, your core. But it's also going to give you long-lasting benefits after you've finished your exercise.
Does it matter if you start running when you're younger or if you start running when you're older, how it conditions the heart? I mean, I would assume that if you've been running since childhood or since you're a teenager, your heart is a little more conditioned than, say, if you start after 40. But are there certain precautions that people have to take if they are over 40, over 50, and want to start running?
That's an excellent question. There's lots of parts of it that I'd like to address. First of all, we know that people who run or exercise when they are young will continue to exercise throughout their adulthood, and the benefits are long lasting. So we know, for example, in a Scandinavian study, we looked at middle-aged men, and men who exercised, specifically running or walking, in their early 30s through their 40s had more supple hearts. There are measurements that we can look at using ultrasound with the heart. They had more supple hearts when they were in their 50s and 60s. And that's a really important thing, because if you have a stiff heart when you're older, you can be at risk for something called congestive heart failure. So the more you run, specifically in this study, the better off you were from a young age moving up into your older life. But that doesn't mean just because you missed the boat when you were a young person that you can't start. Any exercise at any age will help. And specifically running, it's a great sport. It's a cheap sport if you want to exercise without buying a lot of equipment. Your most important equipment are your shoes. And it's something you can do anywhere. So I would encourage anyone to start running for exercise at any age, and there's never an age that it's not good. Now, you asked, are there things that people have to be cautious of or conscientious of? There's several different things. Obviously, if you have problems with your back or problems with your legs in terms of orthopedics, your hips, your knees, you need to be aware of that. You should maybe, if they're serious enough, see your primary care physician or your orthopedic surgeon before you initiate a running program. The other most important thing that I would say, again, about running is to have the appropriate footwear. Because if you don't have the appropriate footwear, you can seriously damage joints that are not already damaged. And so it's of the utmost importance to maintain your footwear so that you're not injuring yourself. The other thing to understand about running, and there's a little bit, it's not controversial, but we do know that there are some things that aren't so good about long distance running. And when I talk about long distance running, I mean marathons and ultra marathons that can sometimes be harmful to the heart. And we don't have a lot of information as yet, but there is a growing body of knowledge that looks at runners, long distance runners, ultra long distance runners, and that there may be some negative aspects of running. And it's sort of to be determined at this point, but it's important to remember that you should always maintain a good, healthy relationship with your physicians, because even though you run and even though you may be a long distance runner, that doesn't mean that you don't have all the other risks for cardiovascular illness that unfortunately are the biggest threat to all of our health. So I think it's a really, really important thing. I have a lot of athletes or very athletic people, runners, who unfortunately have heart attacks and kind of are very curious to know why, if they're such a good runner or if they're so conditioned in their sport,
Right.
how could they possibly have a heart attack? And that's an important thing to understand, is that if you're a man who's older than 55 or a woman that's older than 65 and you have high blood pressure or high cholesterol or diabetes or a combination of those things, or if you've ever smoked or if you have a family history of cardiovascular disease, you're at risk. And so it's important to not neglect your health because you've assumed that because you're running, you're doing a great thing. You are, no doubt about it. But just always make sure that you're in contact with your cardiologist or your physician.
So what kind of check-ins should runners do with their bodies? Are there things that they should notice about the way that their heart feels, or are there things that they should be doing to keep their heart healthy, or things they should be paying attention to as they continue in the sport?
I think for any person, but certainly runners, because most runners are very, very self-aware of, and they're conditioning themselves all the time, so they know what their stamina should be. If you notice that you're just not getting the same kind of run-in, if you don't have the same kind of stamina that you once did, if there's a change that you can't otherwise write off, I took the month of January off, so I have to get back to it, for example, that can be a sign that something might be going on. People often ask me what the signs of heart attack are, for example, and they vary from person to person. So some people, when they have chest pain, that means that there's something going on with their heart. But for other people, it may just be that they're more short of breath, or they're more fatigued, or they get nauseated when they're exercising. So it's important, or other pain in their arm or their jaw on the left side. So it's important to understand that there is not one clear symptom. It's more, what does your body do usually, and is there a change that doesn't make sense to you?
Sure. And I know a lot of runners these days, and a lot of people who exercise are relying on heart rate monitors. We've got watches, we've got chest straps. And how can that help you be aware of, not only your athletic conditioning, but the activity of your heart?
It's a great question as well, and I get a lot of questions about heart rate monitors, and because we do now have the ability to look at almost all of our vital signs just by looking at our watch, there's a upside and a downside. The upside is that frequently we find really abnormal heart rhythms that weren't otherwise diagnosed because people weren't aware of them, but when their iWatch or their Fitbit is telling them that their heart rate is very, very high, we've been able to diagnose people with abnormal heart rhythms. The thing about heart rate, however, is that it's not always the best indicator of how well you're exercising. And I know that might be controversial to some runners. In my world, we use respiratory rate, for example, and I just want to address that. When you're exercising and you're really exerting yourself and you're in an anaerobic metabolic state, meaning you're not using oxygen, you're not burning oxygen, you're burning fat, free fatty acids, you create lactic acid. We've all had great workouts where we feel that burn. That burn is lactic acid, and our body will buffer that acid, and it will create carbon dioxide, which we breathe out. When the carbon dioxide level goes up, our respiratory rate, involuntarily rather, goes up to get rid of that CO2. So when I'm advising any athletes, runners alike, what I often want them to do is run or exercise to the point where they're able to carry a conversation, but they wouldn't be able to whistle or sing. That's the sweet spot that you want to be in when you're exercising. So heart rate, if you're very unfit, is going to go up very rapidly and stay up rapidly, but it's not measuring how fit you are. Our elite athletes, most of them have very, very low resting heart rates, and they don't really increase their heart rate a significant amount when they're exercising because they don't need to, because their heart is so conditioned. So in the long term, as cardiologists, we look at fitness in terms of how slow is your heart and how far up does it rise and how quickly does it diminish once you've finished exercising. And that's a much more delicate thing to understand than just checking your pulse. So I think sometimes people get a little bit more concerned about what their heart rate is doing and not their respiratory rate. Also, a lot of runners are, they may have high blood pressure, for example, and they may take medication that blunts their heart rate response. And I have a number of patients who want to exercise, but they feel that they can't run anymore because they take medicine that doesn't allow their heart rate to go up. That's absolutely not true. You can exercise as long as your doctor says you're healthy enough to exercise. It's okay, and those medications may not allow your heart rate to go up where it once did, but nonetheless, you're going to get the same amount of benefit physically from running.
Wonderful. So I want to talk about Healthy Parks, Healthy People. This is a wonderful initiative. I grew up walking on the trails in the National Seashore and just absolutely loved it. So tell me a little bit about how this program is kind of a partnership with the Cape Cod National Seashore and really a way to encourage people to get out and exercise.
Right. So we're very fortunate to have this long-standing partnership with the Cape Cod National Seashore. We initiated a walking program to help with the Seashore in their approach to helping to make the national park a healthier place to enjoy the outdoors, as well as to become more aware of how you can improve your own health. So we've been doing a walking program there every summer from Memorial Day to Labor Day for the last 4 years. This will be our 5th summer. This summer, however, we're just focusing on our 5K race that is also now going to include a 5-mile race.
Fantastic.
And that will be September 21st, starting at Nauset High School. And you can find out more about that on the Cape Cod Healthcare website, among other options. But we are aiming to help everybody, whether it's visitors for the summer or people who are here on Cape Cod, to experience health with either walking or running. We have 2 programs. We have a Couch to 5K walking program and a Couch to 5K running program, and it's been really wonderful to see the response and people getting up and moving, and because it's so simple and it's so easy.
And they work. Those programs really work.
It really works. It really, really works. And if you put your mind to it and you do very simple things incrementally, you can be a runner. And it's fascinating and very rewarding to watch people become runners who otherwise thought that they couldn't do it. So it's been a wonderful program for us at Cape Cod Healthcare, and we have a lot of employees who are involved in it, and it's been a great way to get in with the community in the Outer Cape and promote health in a fun way.
Wonderful. So again, that's coming up on September 21st. Best time of the year as far as I'm concerned. Nauset High School, if people want to sign up for that, what's the best way for them to do so?
Right now it would be capecodhealthcare.org website.
Great.
That's where the information is.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Great. So capecodhealthcare.org.
Yeah.
Dr. Thompson, thank you so much for joining us
Welcome.
on the Cape Cod Run Show.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Elissa Thompson is a cardiologist with Cape Cod Healthcare's Heart and Vascular Institute. Again, the race for Healthy Parks, Healthy People is coming up on September 21st. You can sign up at capecodhealthcare.org. But if you want to get a run in before that, SCMC Sports is putting on the Sun Run. That's a 2-mile run starting at the Village Green in downtown Hyannis, right on Main Street. And that's on June 14th, the Friday before Father's Day. You can sign up for that and get more information at scmcsports.com. This is the Cape Cod Run Show. I'm Sarah Colvin.